The tensions between the Congress and the Muslim leagues were bound to be formed because Congress as a party led a secular movement, whereas the Muslim League was primarily focused on the development of various aspects for specifically the Muslims. So we see tensions were bound to arise between the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League. As you can see, this is a picture of the Congress which focused on building secular national movement, whereas the people from Muslim League focused on drawing benefits for the Muslims only. But there was a time when, because of certain changes in the international scene, we see that the political scene in India also started to take a turn. Now, at this point of time, when the British was at war with Turkey, the Muslims saw it as a great blow to their prestige, because the head of Turkey, who was the Caliph, was also the religious head of the Muslims. So Caliph, being a religious leader, was regarded by the Muslims in very high senses, and therefore they felt it as a religious blow that the Britishers were fighting with the Turkish people. Now, keeping in mind that several sacred places of the Muslims were also established in the Ottoman and the Turkish empires that were, being harmed at this point of time by the British during the wars. So that was also taken as a great blow. Now, due to these developments, the Muslims felt that the British were, again causing certain atrocities on the Muslims. The third thing that happened was that the partition of Bengal was called off. So the basic, promise that was made of a different nation and, place for the Muslims specifically, that idea was no more there. So we see that because of these certain changes in the international scene, the INC and the Muslim League came together. So the first one was that the British decided to attack Turkey and its Sultan, which brought the Muslims in opposition to the British. Second was the cancellation of partition of Bengal was also seen as a blow to the Muslims. So we see that at this point of time then, the ideology of the Muslim League was also changing, because leaders in the Muslim League like Abul Kalam Azad, we see Shaukat Ali and Muhammad Ali Jinnah, they were talking about the concept of self-government. So they had accepted the goal of self-government, and their ideological base was also changing. So several Muslim personalities popularized the nationalist ideals in the Muslim League itself. Thus, we see that the Muslim League adopting the objective of self-governance in around 1913. And once this objective, was brought to the forefront and the Muslim League accepted it, we could see that the Congress and the Muslim League were in fact having, very similar goals at that point of time. So their objectives became very similar and very close to the Congress, and this brought the Muslim League closer to the INC. So around 1915, in the Bombay session, in fact, the Congress, the INC and the Muslim League had a joint session where they now discussed various reforms that they could ask from the British government once the First World War was over. So we see that around 1915 Bombay session, the League was attended by some Congress delegates. So specifically the Muslim League session that was held in 1915 was also attended by Congress leaders. And there we see discussions being held between the leaders of the two groups on the possible concessions to be demanded from the British after the First World War ended. So there was a joint session of the Muslim League and the Congress that was held just after the Congress had visited the Bombay session of the League around 1916 at Lucknow. And here there was a mutual acceptance of certain clauses that they decided to take on together. So we see that there were negotiations between the two which led to the acceptance of a set of mutually accepted political reforms. So they decided upon and agreed upon certain political reforms that both of the parties, INC and Muslim League, would take up, and this was decided in 1916 in Lucknow. This pact came to be known as the Lucknow Pact. So it became a historic pact because it brought the INC and the Muslim League, the two parties that had separated primarily due to their communal divide, they had come together now in the national movement. So once again we see that the larger parties in India joining hands at the national movement. As you can see, the picture here represents the signing of the Lucknow Pact in 1916 with the members of both the parties. Can you tell me when was the Lucknow Pact signed? Was it 1916, 1915, 1914 or 1918? The correct answer will be 1916. So what were the clauses of this pact? What was decided in this pact? The first thing that was decided was that the Lucknow Pact, which was signed, was to go on between 1916 and 1922, and the Congress and the League would work together during this phase that was between 1916 to 1922 to achieve certain goals that they had set. So the Congress accepted the entire idea or the demand of the Muslim League to have separate electorates, and the League ensured that it would abide by the rules of election and the majority rule. So whoever majorly wins would get those seats from the Muslims. The third was that this occasion also provided the opportunity for the assertive and early nationalists to resolve their differences and work together. If you remember, the early nationalists and assertives had broken apart, from the main INC in the great Surat split that occurred, and the assertives were expelled from INC. But the Lucknow Pact ensured that both the wings of INC now would come together and join efforts in the larger growing national movement. Now, at this point of time, we see that the British, who was already, at the vulnerable end of political affairs, because in the international scene, the World War had happened and the British were already pressurized due to it. And on the other hand, we see that the Home Rule League in India is also creating a great pressure on the British, who saw that the growing unity between the Hindus and the Muslims, now that INC and Muslim League had joined hands, that was also growing, in the sense that the British understood that now India would come in the forefront with its movement against the British. So the British readily came up front and stated that they would quickly move towards giving India the powers of self-governance after the war ended. So we see that these developments, along with the tension of World War and Bal Gangadhar Tilak's Home Rule movement, put immense pressure on British authorities. Now we see that after the fact that partition of Bengal was also called off, that had upset the Muslims primarily, and that is why a lot of promises weren't kept from the side of the Britishers. That is why they decided to in fact move over to the Congress's side and join hands. Now, here if you see, a large crowd waits for Bal Gangadhar Tilak at Central Station in Madras in 1917. So that is how famous the leaders of Indian National Congress had become. The Home Rule League was gaining very much importance. So we see that to ease these tensions, the growing popularity, the August Declaration was made in 1970, where the British decided and declared that self-governance would be given to India after the war. Now, this entire alliance between the Muslim League and the Congress was in fact short-lived. Though this alliance was, very healthy, and it was moved towards the fact that Home Rule League was gaining importance, the national movement had grown, but in fact it was short-lived, and it could not go on till a broad sense of time, because of the very fact that Muslim League wanted to move away from India and have a separate state for themselves, which was a secessionist idea which Congress did not agree with. So we see that they would have to part ways after the failure of the non-cooperation movement. Thus, though the entire fact of the joining of INC and Muslim League was short-lived, or the coming of the assertives and early nationalists was short-lived, the basic fact was that they had joined hands in the greater effort of the national movement, which would move ahead to become a mass movement and garner more efforts from the common masses in India, making it a movement that would ultimately pressurize British to give to the Indians' demand of independence. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You can also register for free at DeltaStep.com or download the DeltaStep app to get access to all our 5,000 plus amazing videos as per your school syllabus. Master each topic with our adaptive practice technology. Get million plus questions with step-by-step solutions and unlimited mock tests. Get all your doubts resolved instantly, learn via games, and win amazing prizes like PlayStations and iPads. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it is rewarding too. So register for free now.